Imagine you woke up tomorrow and everything was gone. Your scripts, your automations, your pipeline, your whole setup, wiped clean. You have to start from scratch, and someone asks you, okay, what is the very first thing you automate? I have been running a fairly involved content and data operation for a while now. And if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I honestly would have given you the wrong answer. I would have told you something impressive, something that sounded like a real system. Some ambitious pipeline that chains 5 things together. But I have built enough of this stuff now to know that the impressive answer is almost always the wrong answer when you are starting out. So in this video, I am going to tell you exactly what I would automate first if I started over tomorrow. And I want to be honest with you about the principle behind it. Because the principle is the whole thing. The principle nobody actually tells you. Before I give you any order or any list, I want to establish the one rule that changed how I think about automation entirely. And it sounds almost too simple when I say it out loud. Automate the thing you do every day and quietly hate, not the rare impressive thing you wish you could do. That is it. That is the whole principle. Not the most technically interesting problem, not the thing that would look good in a video. The thing you actually do on a normal Tuesday that is dull and repetitive and costs you time and you never talk about because it is too boring to mention. I wasted a long stretch of my early setup time building automations for edge cases, things that would be amazing if they happened. Complex chains that kicked in under specific conditions I had only hit twice. They were fun to build. They taught me almost nothing useful, and they broke constantly because complex things break constantly. Meanwhile, the thing I did every single day, manually, for months, while working on the flashy stuff, that was where the real time was sitting. The boring daily grind is where the hours live. And that is where you start. Here is how I think about it practically. Look at your last 5 working days. Not the ambitious projects, not the things you are proud of. The 5 minutes here and the 10 minutes there that nobody would ever film a tutorial about. The thing you did at the start of each day to get yourself into a state where you could begin. The thing you do at the end of each day to close out and save your place. The thing you do every single time you get a new piece of work that you have to prep before you can actually touch it. That is the target. The automatable time is almost never hiding in the complex places. It is hiding in plain sight, right at the start of the day, in the thing that is so routine you have stopped calling it a chore. The first thing I would automate, the daily annoyance. So concretely, what does that mean? The first thing I would automate if I started over is whatever single task I do every day that I quietly hate doing. Not every day in theory, literally every day in practice. For a lot of people, that is something so basic they have stopped noticing it. Moving a file from one place to another, checking a number in a spreadsheet and copying it somewhere else, sending the same message in the same format over and over, renaming a batch of things before you can work with them. These are things that take 2 minutes, but 2 minutes every single day is 12 hours a year. And more importantly, they pull your attention out of real work every single time. The first automation I would build would be a small, stupid, reliable script that does exactly that one thing and nothing else. I am not talking about a whole system. I am talking about 20 lines of code, maybe less, that handles the one task you resent doing. The reason this is first is not because it saves the most time. It is because it teaches you the shape of automation without breaking anything important. You build it, you run it, you verify it did what you expected, and you feel what it means to have a machine do a job instead of you. That feeling is worth more than the 2 minutes you saved. Then protect what you have built. Backups. The second thing I would automate immediately after that first small win is backups. This is the one that sounds boring even by the standards of boring things. But hear me out, because nothing I have learned in building any of this compares to the visceral importance of automated backups in terms of how quickly things can go wrong without them. You spend weeks building something, a set of scripts, a small pipeline, a workflow you finally have working just right. And then something happens. A drive fails. You upgrade something, and it breaks. You accidentally overwrite a folder. You run a bad command, and everything you built is just gone. If you had automated backups, that is a bad afternoon. If you did not, it can be weeks of lost work. The automation here is simple. A script that runs on a schedule, compresses the things that matter, and sends them somewhere that is not your machine. A cloud bucket, a second drive, anywhere that is not the same physical device as the originals. It does not need to be elegant. It needs to run every day without you thinking about it. I would not move on to anything else until this was running and I had verified once, by actually restoring something from it, that it worked. Verification is part of the automation. A backup you have never tested is not a backup. It is a comfort blanket. Then make things happen without you. A scheduler. The third thing I would automate is a scheduler. This is the step where automation stops being a convenience and starts being a real force multiplier. The first two things I described are still reactive in a sense. The daily annoyance script runs when you run it. The backup runs on a timer, sure, but you still had to set that timer manually. A scheduler is the moment where you start building a system that has opinions about when things happen. Something that wakes up at a set time and says, it is time to do this thing, whether or not you are at your desk, whether or not you remembered, whether or not you are even awake. For me, this changed the character of what I was building. I stopped feeling like a person who runs tools and started feeling like a person who owns a system. Now things could happen at 3 a.m. Now the daily file could be waiting for me when I woke up, instead of being the first thing I had to do. Now a report could be ready before I had my coffee. A basic scheduler is not complicated. On most operating systems, you can set one up in under an hour. The point is not the complexity. The point is the shift in what your setup can do. Your system starts working for you instead of waiting for you. And once you feel that, you cannot unfeel it. Then give yourself a narrow assistant for the glue. The fourth thing I would add, and I want to be specific here about the word narrow, is one assistant for the dull glue work. By glue work, I mean the connective tissue tasks that are not quite automatable with a plain script but are too repetitive to do by hand all day. Things like drafting a routine message from a template, pulling a summary out of a log file in plain language, generating a file name that follows your naming convention given a description. Small things where a little intelligence helps, but the job itself is tiny. The key word is narrow. I do not mean build yourself an AI that runs everything. I mean pick the one specific boring glue task that costs you the most time and create one small tool that handles exactly that task, not a general purpose assistant. Not something trying to run your whole workflow. One job, well-defined, checkable output, where you can look at what it produced and know in 5 seconds whether it got it right. The reason I make this the fourth thing rather than the first is that an assistant is only useful once you have a real daily workflow for it to plug into. If you try to build an AI assistant before you have the boring fundamentals in place, you end up with something clever floating on nothing. The daily task is the ground. The backups protect the ground. The scheduler makes the ground operate without you. The assistant helps with the work that happens on the ground. What I would not automate first. Now I want to be just as direct about the things I would not touch first, because this is where most people go wrong, and I absolutely went wrong here myself. I would not start with anything complex. I would not start with a multi-step pipeline that has 6 dependencies and 3 failure modes. I would not start with the impressive end-to-end workflow that you saw in a demo and want to replicate. I would not start with the dream system, and I say this having built versions of that stuff, and having watched it break in ways that are demoralizing and hard to debug when you are still learning the basics. Complex automations teach you something eventually, but they teach it slowly, through pain, and the lessons are buried under layers of interconnected problems that are hard to separate. A simple automation failing is a clear lesson. A complex automation failing is a mystery. And early on, you do not have the map yet to navigate the mystery efficiently. You end up spending 2 weeks debugging something that a simpler version of the same idea would have made obvious in a day. Start with the small thing. Start with the thing you can hold in your head all at once. Start with something that fails loudly and clearly when it fails. so you know exactly what went wrong and can fix it in an hour. I know it feels like the complex thing is the real work and the small thing is just practice, but the small thing is exactly as real. And for most of the durable automation I have running right now, the version that actually ships looked a lot more like the simple thing than the ambitious design I drew up at the start. Small and proven beats, dreaming big. And this connects to the last thing I would do differently if I started over, which is to resist the pull of the big plan. When you are starting out, the dream system is extremely easy to imagine and extremely hard to build, and the imagining of it can consume a lot of the time you should be spending on the building of it. Every person I have seen build something genuinely reliable did it the same way. One small thing proven to work, one more small thing proven to work, a third proven, then a fourth. Slowly, a system emerges that has never not worked, because every piece of it was verified before the next piece was added. Compare that to the person who designs the whole system up front, builds all of it at once, and then tries to make it work when the whole thing is connected and nothing is behaving. Debugging a system where every piece is untested and all of them depend on each other is one of the worst experiences in this work, and it is entirely avoidable. The boring part, the one where you prove each piece before you lay the next one, is faster in the end. It feels slower. It looks less impressive, but it is faster. And when it is done, you trust it. You know every piece because you built every piece one at a time, with your eyes open. That trust is worth a lot. The honest reflection on building this kind of operations. So if I started over tomorrow, I would begin with the one small task I hate doing every day. I would build the simplest possible version of that automation, verify it works, and leave it alone. Then I would set up backups, test them once by actually restoring something, and move on. Then I would get a scheduler running so that things happen without me having to be there. Then I would add one narrow assistant for the one dull job where a little intelligence earns its keep. And I would do nothing else, nothing more ambitious, until those four things were proven and running cleanly. Everything I have now started with something that small, not with a grand design, but with one boring thing that was costing me time every day. And I kept going the same way, one small reliable piece at a time. Until one day I looked up and I had an operation. No single step in that journey felt like the important moment, but each one was. And the only thing that made any of it possible was not the ambition or the vision. It was the patience to prove the small thing before reaching for the next one. That is the honest version of how this gets built. Not in a blaze of inspired engineering, quietly, in order, one reliable piece at a time. If you want to follow the rest of that journey, the unglamorous practical side of building something that actually runs, subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.